Is she getting her fentanyl inside of the building?
Yes.
So it's being furnished by another resident.
Yes.
And how is she paying for that?
I don't want to know.
Yeah.
I know she's not getting money from me or any of her family members. But I do know that it's coming from in the building.
So you're not financially supporting your daughter?
Not at all. I've given her money one time. It was on her birthday. I gave her $5 so that she could go get what she needed so she'd come with us for her birthday. And she was going to go downtown, and she said, okay, I don't need to go downtown now. I'll be right back. And she went into the building to get what she needed.
And why are you making the decision not to financially support her?
Because I know it's going to kill her.
Thank you so much for coming and talking to me today. I really appreciate it. So do you want to just tell us why you're here?
Thank you for having me. I'm a parent of a tenant at 22 North in Bellingham, Washington, which is a housing first program.
And how did your child end up in 22 North?
She first got connected through the Northwest Youth Services. They had a teen center. It was like a drop-in center for homeless youth. And she started hanging out there. And they encouraged her to become homeless so she could get into this program. So she moved out of my house and lived out of her car while she waited to get into the building.
And so what was life like for her before she ended up going around this homeless shelter or this homeless center?
She struggled, for the last few years. The whole shutdown of the world really affected her. She was graduating and moving into adulthood. So she was pretty scared, even though she wanted to be moved out and independent. So she left home and moved to Seattle for a few months and then ended up coming back up to Bellingham. And I told her she was welcome to stay with me, but there would be some boundaries so that my other children would be safe, I had to know who was coming and going out of my house. She wasn't able to come in any night, any hour of the night because I didn't know who would be coming or going. And just some boundaries around cleaning up after herself, things like that.
And how long from the time that she learned about 22 North through this center, how much time elapsed between then and when she moved in?
It was about a month and a half.
Well, that's pretty fast.
Yeah, so she found out about it. She moved out of my house pretty quickly and started staying in her car because she told me it was so that she could get into this building that she had to prove she was homeless. So she parked her car outside of the teen center and was sleeping out of that.
So, and let me just go back just a little bit. So this teen center that she was showing up at before she actually made the choice to be homeless sort of marketed this opportunity to her. Did they ever contact you?
Not at all.
They have never talked to you?
Not
They
once.
never ever checked the validity of her circumstances?
Not at all.
They never consulted you about her living experience, relationship, or anything?
Not at all.
And did that surprise you at all?
Yes, actually it did. And it was confusing partially because she did have resources. She also at the time had money in the bank. She had a car, and she was working off and on doing like DoorDash delivery stuff. And then within about a month and a half, she moved into 22 North. Her car ended up breaking down. It got towed eventually because the Opportunity Council said she could park it there. And then when the car disappeared, I called and said, why did you tell her she could park it there? And they said, we'll get it out of impound for you. Never heard from them again. So she lost her car. Her bank got overdrawn by $500. And I found out because my bank got overdrawn to pay for that 2 days before Christmas. And my daughter, of course, no longer has a job and no resources. She's lost all connection with her family, mostly because of her own, the way the building is set up. They have security. And so nobody can just go in there and check on her. We have to get permission from the staff, and then they go up and check on her, and then they let us know what they decide they want to tell us.
Do you know if your daughter has signed, or have you asked her to sign a release of information for you to have contact with any of the service providers that are involved in her life currently?
I have not asked her to sign that. I have asked her to help me put something together in case she ends up in the emergency room again so that I could be advocate for her.
And what did she end up in the emergency room for?
She actually was in septic shock. She had a really bad kidney infection, and she had contacted me via text to tell me she really needed to go to the emergency room and ask for my help. And it's already really hard to communicate with her because she was using her boyfriend's phone. When I went to 22 North, they told me that they hadn't seen her and wouldn't let me go check on her, even though she'd asked me to come get her. Took me a day and a half and calling the police and getting them to go help so that I could get in there to get her out.
Welfare check.
To get her out to go to the emergency room, which she had asked for my help for. And since then, they say that next time they'll let me in there, but I don't trust that they will at all.
Do you know how many young people? And so is this place, does it just cater to youth?
No, it's a combination of people that have long-standing mental health drug addiction issues that are older, often people that have lived on the street for a long time, and then coupled with now young adults that are struggling, that are homeless. And
this population is intermingled throughout the building.
Yes.
And okay. And again, just to reiterate, no kind of contact with any of the staff inside, no kind of safety plans put in place with family, no kind of anything.
Not prior to. I have since then found out who her case manager is and have made contact with her, and it has primarily been by me being very adamant that I'm going to be in my daughter's life and protect her, and that they will be liable if they don't allow me to help her, that they have finally started to build somewhat of a better relationship with me in recognizing that, like, if my daughter goes missing, they call me, things like that. But they treat me like I'm bothering her, like I am a nuisance to her. My daughter has never asked me not to come there. She has never said anything like that. But I've had one of the staff members tell me that because of my attitude, that's why my daughter doesn't want me coming there. And when I asked my daughter about it, she said, no way, I've never said that. I don't feel that. And when I, again, try to hold them accountable, they just go silent on it.
Have you met the case manager in person?
Yes.
How old is the case manager?
She must be in her young or early 20s, probably.
So she's not much older than your daughter?
No, okay. Not at all.
And do you feel like a early 20-something is capable of helping another person? And I would imagine, well, based on my own experience in working in social services and housing first buildings, typically folks that are case managers cover a wide range of the population that exists within these buildings. And so do you feel confident that this individual has the capability of managing not only your daughter's life, but multiple other people with challenges such as addiction and mental health?
Not at all. She doesn't have the experience. And there's also such a lack of organization in the building and within the staff itself. When I took her personally to the emergency room and the staff watched me walk her out, they never told her case manager. So when my daughter came back from the hospital 4 days later, I mean, that's how bad she was. They had to admit her for 3.5 days, and they only let her go because she promised she was going to go home with me instead of going back into that building. Mm-hmm. And she went back to the building, and the case manager was irate at my daughter because she had no idea that my daughter was in the emergency room or that she had medical issues at all. The staff never told her that she was gone, so she thought she just went missing or whatever.
And so did you witness any of the interaction between the case manager and your daughter when you brought her back to the site?
Yeah, I actually had words with the case manager.
And so did the case manager express herself angrily to your daughter in front of you?
She started to, and then I made it very clear that my daughter was in the hospital. Mm-hmm. And why hadn't they contacted me to help her? And why did it take a day and a half for me to even get in there to help her? And she looked very overwhelmed and said, I had no idea. I was not informed of this by any of the staff. And she looked very overwhelmed by it. Like, she just really felt confused. And then how to deal with me because I'm a parent caring about my daughter. She didn't have the skills at all. It was like, oh, well, I thought I was checking on my client. And then now you're telling me she's been in the hospital this whole time. And I was very irate. My daughter had very clear physical medical issues.
Do you think that your daughter, especially in this state of her current existence, and whatever level of addiction she's in, and with whatever challenges she has, do you think that she has the maturity to be aware of how to take care of herself in that state of her health problems that you helped her manage?
Not at all. You know, when my daughter turned 18, one of the things that she had said to me and her younger sister was, I don't feel like I'm 18. I feel like I'm more like 16. She's always recognized that she felt younger for her age, which is why I said, please come back home. Let's build some more life skills. You know, I realized how overwhelming that transition was into adulthood, and I want to better prepare you, you know? So she was aware even before she moved in there that she didn't have all the skills to manage an apartment by herself and manage bills or any of that stuff. Yeah. And the state of those apartments inside there are uninhabitable. Yeah. And if anybody did a private investigation into that building, it would get shut down immediately.
What's the name of the agency that runs 22 North?
Opportunity Council.
Opportunity Council. Okay. How do you feel about the folks that you've met? Do you feel like your daughter's in a safe place? Do you feel like she is cared for?
I feel like my daughter's on her own in there, except for the people that she's aligned with that also have major drug addiction issues. And the people that I've met that I've just talked to outside the building, they seem, you know, nice enough. Some of them have pretty serious mental health issues. I think one of them has schizophrenia. Actually, a couple of them that I've met have admitted they have schizophrenia or different, like pretty serious, severe mental health issues. There's a couple people that are physically dependent, like one's in a wheelchair, one is just has a hard time walking. There's one in particular that I do feel like she cares about my daughter, and she has told me, your daughter's going to die. I'm tired of seeing these kids die. I feel like I want to move out and just be homeless so I don't have to keep watching these kids die in here. So I feel like she cares, but she's also caught up in the system of what are her choices, you know? Mm-hmm. So there's also a huge amount of unknown in there. There are people that get kicked out of that building that are violent criminals. And I very regularly get let in by tenants that don't know who I am, and they just let me in. They leave the door open. And today I went down there and the same thing happened where a tenant just lets me in. And so and there was no staff around. And when the staff came back down, he said, can I get you to stand outside? And I said, this is exactly why violent criminals keep getting in here. The system is not protecting the tenants at all. I'm only outside because I know the rules and I'm going to abide by them. But my daughter was held hostage by somebody that is still
inside of the building?
Inside of the building, who never got arrested.
Did they live in the building also?
No.
Okay.
He got in the building. He held my daughter hostage for 3 or 4 days. When they finally discovered him in there and got him out, he was never arrested or convicted. He was in another program. And I think that instead of them actually getting the police directly involved, they got a hold of his case manager and told them. He has since keeps going back to the building, even though he has a restraining order, that my daughter had a protection order. He still shows up very regularly to try to find her. He recently went into a business across the street, a restaurant, and told them my daughter had been murdered. So they called the police, and I get a phone call and find out that he was just making it up to try to get in to see my daughter. And this is the type of everyday situation that we never know whether my daughter's living or dead, if this person's gotten back into the building holding her hostage again. There are times where I went into that building that the smell in there was so strong that I got extremely sick. I firmly believe that there is drug manufacturing going on in there.
How much does your daughter pay for rent?
Nothing.
And why is that?
Because she doesn't have a job, and they have labeled her as having PTSD or something like that. And so they've told her that when she does get a job that she'll have to pay something. It's a percentage.
And they're aware that your daughter is a fentanyl addict?
Absolutely.
And have they provided any kind of support services to help her move away from fentanyl use?
Narcan and needles.
That's what they're giving her?
Yeah.
So they administer free needles and Narcan in the building?
Yes.
Do you know if they have any kind of support services on staff, such as access to assessments for drug and alcohol treatment, mental health counseling?
I do not. I think they have some sort of mental health counselor, but
And is your daughter required to see any of those people?
I don't think so.
Do you know how many residents occupy the entire building?
I believe it's about 40 or 45. I could be wrong, but I keep getting that number. It's around 40, I think.
And so who have you talked to about this place? And who have you talked to?
So I originally talked to the supervisor of the building, or the manager of the building, and then she went silent. And then I started engaging with my daughter's case manager, and then she went silent. I have taken all of my concerns, my ongoing concerns, to the Whatcom County Council because they fund the building. They provide funding to the Opportunity Council for that building. And
what has been the response from the council?
Not much. One council member, Kathy Kirshner, has given me information on statistics in there. She's also helped send me resources for inpatient, outpatient treatment, just of her own accord when I've told her, if my daughter can get access to this, and so she's
But then your daughter would then be returned back to the building, right?
Yes.
So,
which is what happened when she went into the hospital.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was too naive to realize what was going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I'm not going to say I'm going to be the bearer of bad news. I'm going to keep it really honest with you. So when folks are sent out from shelters and housing first buildings, they are then returned. Usually their treatment stays are very short in nature. And then they are returned back to the same environment.
Mm-hmm.
There is no clean and sober support services on site, and they don't have buildings to accommodate that anymore. So it's almost like when the rat starts to exit the maze, there's a wall dropped down right in front of its face right before it gets to the door.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's rewarded for failing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a system that is very repetitive.
And I've had a number of conversations with my daughter about a lot of this stuff, and I have encouraged her to go to treatment, and I've told her that the door is open for her to come home, and she wants to get out, but she's scared now of how that's going to affect our family. Even if she does go to treatment, what does that look like on the other side of that? And she's extremely scared of it affecting her siblings. And I've, told her I'm going to go through it if she's willing to start. I'm there for her, but I'm scared too. My daughters, they're scared.
Yeah.
We don't know what's on the other side of this,
Yeah. It's a long, hard road. That takes a whole lot of drive and commitment and hard stuff. And as we know, with daughters, I have I have two daughters. Teenage and young adult daughters are really hard, especially moms and daughters. But there are some things, it just takes a lot of hard work and commitment.
I think there's also a narrative too, that just to even start that is going to be so incredibly painful. And so there's, they're encouraged almost to not even try.
Well, that's
because
why
it's it's going to be too painful.
Suboxone,
don't even go there.
methadone.
Yeah.
So they're doing a lot of sort of transitioning over to another level of dependence. And so, it's part of the challenge with everything that's going on. And, in order for them to receive the funding, they have to have their units filled. They have to have their units filled. And so, if that building could, if in an ideal world, what would that building be like? If you could have your way and your daughter chose to stay, what would you want to have different in that building?
Well, open access for family to have relationships with them. If the client in there is wanting a relationship with their family members, they should never be kept out. One of the things that with my daughter that we've always had is accountability. And if I can go knock on her door and make sure she's okay, that would be a world of a difference for her. But now there's this level separation between us. And when she's in that dark place, even if she wants someone to check in on her, nobody will. And the building has told, the staff has told me multiple times that if somebody goes quiet, they have to wait almost 3 days before they can go check to make sure that someone's not dead or in medical emergency mode. And that's extremely concerning. I don't think that's safe. I don't think that's humane at all. The other thing is just where's the support for treatment? Where is the support for mental health counseling? You know, my daughter was totally traumatized in that building. Has she ever had support for it? Because as soon as they let that guy out, they put my daughter back in that same room. You know, and anybody that's dealt with trauma knows putting somebody back in a situation where they've been heavily traumatized, it's very likely for them to spiral into depression and anxiety and all sorts of, you know, addiction issues and all of that if they don't have the support to be somewhere else as they try to process what's happened.
Yeah. And they're not providing any kind of mental health therapy for her.
Not at all.
Which it might not even be effective if she's using fentanyl.
Yeah.
Is she getting her fentanyl inside of the building?
Yes.
So it's being furnished by another resident?
Yes.
And how is she paying for that?
I don't want to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know she's not getting money from me or any of her family members. She's, but I do know that it's coming from in the building.
So you're not financially supporting your daughter?
Not at all. I'd given her money one time. It was on her birthday. I gave her $5 so that she could go get what she needed so she'd come with us for her birthday. And she was going to go downtown and she said, okay, I don't need to go downtown now. I'll be right back. And she went into the building to get what she needed.
And why are you making the decision not to financially support her?
Because I know it's going to kill her. And as much as I know, you know, every hit for her feels like relief, it's destroyed her life. And in a year, she looks different. She's afraid of anyone that knows her to see her. She's afraid of her sisters to see her. Her grandma, who she's always been really close to, she hasn't talked to for a year since she moved in there. So I know that she even knows. She's talked to me multiple times about people she's helped that overdosed. She herself has overdosed multiple times. She's talked to me about just the extreme drive to get another hit. Like after she's helped somebody that's overdosed, it's not enough to wake her up. She immediately goes and tries to get another hit somewhere, you know. She's scared. She keeps thinking she can get out on her own, and now she's realizing she can't, but she doesn't know how to get help.
Have you tried to invite law enforcement into this?
I haven't really quite known how. Okay. I have called them to get her out of the building or to do a well check when she said, like, yeah, come get me, and then went quiet. But that's the only law enforcement help that I've gotten so far.
And no real help from the council. What do you think? I mean, what can they do differently? What can the council, the city, what can everybody do differently?
Well, it would start by stopping funding a totally non-accountable project like this.
Yeah.
I have asked them for data. Show me data of any person that has come out of this project better for it. Yeah. Give me one success story, and they don't have one out of all of the people that have come through there in the last several years.
And how
they do have murders. They have, multiple deaths on a regular basis. They have 3 in the last 3 or 4 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How long has this building been in?
I believe 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they've had multiple deaths in that short period of time.
Yes. And there was one actually on the 9th.
Just the 9th of this month?
Yes, a few days ago.
And do you know what age the person was?
I don't. It's really hard to get the information now.
Right.
And it's a good day when I don't get the call.
Yeah.
But I still try to check in.
And you are her emergency contact?
Yes.
On her information?
Yeah.
Okay. But the staff still isn't talking to you really about it?
No. They will tell me if they've seen her in the last 24 hours. That is the only information I can get on my daughter.
Okay. If you could leave a message for other parents who might not know really what to do with their kids, whose kids might be trying to get into this building, what would your message to them be?
Honestly, I don't know. It's it's like I thought I was doing the right thing to hold my daughter accountable, and then there's that part of me that regrets that. But I know my daughter's not a victim. She's smart. She's capable. She's an amazing artist, visual artist. She's an amazing piano player and singer. I wish that I could do things differently, but I honestly don't quite know how. Like when she went to the hospital, I didn't call her grandma. I regret that. I regret not having every family member come, as uncomfortable as it would have been for her. I wish I would have had everybody connect, because maybe that would have changed things for her.
How can I support you?
Any tools or insight into what gave you that courage to take that first step so that I can help her in some way, because it's such a loss. It just feels like
incarceration.
I sometimes pray for that for my daughter, Yeah.
Unfortunately, in those buildings, sometimes they're in a protected, gated place.
Yeah. Well,
they're not necessarily protected, but they're protected from the world outside so that nobody can access them.
Yeah. That's been the biggest challenge, is that building keeps her isolated, which is the worst thing for her or anybody in that situation.
Do you think we can get her to talk to me?
I actually tried to go pick her up today.
Okay. Well, even if we don't do it like this, let's maybe show her my pictures.
I've sent her some of your videos, and
show her my side-by-sides and tell her that I'd like to have lunch with her. No cameras.
Okay. Yeah, she wants out, and we talk about it a lot. We've talked about death. We've talked about, her getting harmed. She's talked with me about some of the relationships she has, and her own her own unknowing of what it really means in those relationships, So yeah, any ways that I can support her, and just so many other people are struggling. And I think parents, we don't know how to help. We don't know, is tough love the right thing? Because, I've always been the tough love parent, and then it felt like it almost made it worse, because there was this whole narrative and group of people that are promoting victimhood. And now they just really got my daughter right there, and it's hard not to see her as a victim, even in this circumstance, And I know she has the strength. I know she has that strong will, but it's going to take more than that. For her to get clean.
She's going to need some support to get up out of it.
Yeah.
And then her strong will be able to kick in and do the work. Unfortunately, it always sounds, this is what I'm reflecting on as you're talking. We listen to a lot of the narratives that are running rampantly through our society about compassion and dignity and individual dignity. What we don't recognize is that that's typically the shell casing of, an empty room, essentially. And so when a person is brought into these loving, compassionate environments, enabling them to have their own autonomy, then they're left in this empty place where nobody actually is there. They don't understand. They don't care. They're not there to really provide services. And then the person dwindles and dies. It's almost like a seed or a seedling that doesn't get water. And then they wither away while the family is on the outside. And we continue to cover stories where we are able to see where the system fails, because the system fights to put this child in this place, and then the child is left alone.
And the people that work there, they never got to see my daughter a year ago. They don't know that she's this amazing musician and super loves, just is so close to her siblings. And they didn't get to see her shine when she fixed her own car after it got broken, and the pride she had of doing that herself, and the pride she had of starting to save money. They didn't get to see that side of her. And so they look at her and they treat her like she's always been where she's at right now.
Yeah. And there's an idea that is consistently transferred from person to person and place to place, is that they can't.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest fallacy that we are spreading across this nation, because yes, they can.
Absolutely.
They can. And she can. We just got to get her out of there. Is there anything that anything else you'd like to talk about today?
I just want to say thank you for sharing your journey, because it gives me hope.
Yeah.
And it gives a lot of other people hope too, including my daughter. Yeah. There are people that want out and they just don't quite know, and they are told they can't and all of that. And then there's people like you that show them differently. So thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.